Let us have more illustrative problems for our statement of cash flows topic. So we have here the following data are taken from the records of Pagong Delivery Services for the year 2018. We have cash received, and then we have cash paid. Then there are additional information. We are then required to prepare a statement of cash flow and to determine the net cash flow from operating activities, investing activities, financing, and also to determine our net cash flow and also the cash balance on December 31, 2018. So in this case, class, if we are given this kind of problem and also problems in our SEF, I believe it is better if we could first determine what kind of transaction are these cash inflows and outflows are related. So ato sa sigurong i-check no og kung unsa ni siya, current asset ba, current liability, and then asa man ni nato makit-an sa SCI, sa SFP, and then from there on we can determine if asa siyang activity, either operating, investing, or financing. So, for example, let's start with our cash received from customer. So here, this is a credit to our sales. Oh, this is a delivery service to our service revenue instead of sales. So where do we find that? In our SCI. So this is operating. Next, we have collection of accounts at 90,000. This is a credit to our accounts receivable. So this is a current asset found in our SFP. This is operating. For the proceeds of our financing loan, this is a credit to our loans payable, a non-current liability. So we can find this in our SFP. This is financing. Then we have proceeds from the sale of our furniture. So the furniture here is a non-current asset found in our SFP. This is investing. Then we have our dividends on stock. This is an additional income class. If you can recall the presentation of our SCI, in the lower portion after our operating income or loss, you add there or deduct the additional income or additional expenses. So in this case, the dividends on stock is an additional income. This is a dividend income since Pagong Delivery Services is into rendering of services, no? So the dividends are additional income. So since we can find this in our SCI, this is an operating activity. Then we have our commission income still in our SCI, so operating. And then the owner had an additional investment. This is affecting our owner's equity account. So if we are to create an entry for this one, this would be debit to cash and then credit owner capital. Okay, so this is a financing activity. And then next we have rent income. So this is also found in our SCI. So this is operating. Then let's proceed to our cash paid for the purchase of land. So the land is a non-current asset. So this is investing. Next, payment for the interest on a loan. This is interest expense in our SCI, so operating. Next, we have partial payment of financing loan. So the loan is a non-current liability found in our SFP. This is financing. Then we have our operating expenses found in our SCI, so operating activity. And then we have our taxes and licenses. This is found in our SCI. In the lower portion class, we will discuss this in the later part of our topic. We have the title of taxation. So if you can recall, our SCI, the end portion is net income. So after we have declared income or loss, then that's where we compute how much taxes we are going to pay. Okay? Because in every business, kailangan man gyud na mo pay og tax class. So mo na siya nga ang taxes and also the licenses is considered as an operating activity because this is also included in our revenue generating financial statement. So remember class, for our taxes and licenses, we can find this in our SCI. So this is operating. And then we also have here our gain on sale of furniture. So this is a non-cash transaction. So from here class, since we have already identified the activities related to our cash flow, we can now create our SCF. So in order to create it, we start with our heading. So here we have Pagong Delivery Services Statement of Cash Flow for the year ended December 31, 2018. So we start with our cash flows from operating activities. So we identify the cash inflows and cash outflows from our operating activities based on our analysis here. So first, we have our cash received from customers at 980,000. Next, we have our receivables collected at 90,000. Then, we have our dividend income at 23,000, followed by our commission income at 11,000. Then, our rent income at 99,000. Then, we proceed with our cash outflows, payment of interest at 45,000. Next, payment of our operating expenses at 310,000. Then, payment of taxes and licenses. So we sum this up to arrive at our net cash from operating activities. So it's at 844,250. That is also the answer to the requirement letter A. Next, we proceed with our cash flows from investing activities. So we go back here. We have our proceeds from sale of furniture at 55,000. And then we have our purchase of land at 700,000. So the net cash from our investing activities is a negative 645,000. So in this case class, this only means nga mas daghan og money gipagawas si company para mopalit or mo invest og mga long-term assets. So next, we proceed with our cash flows from financing activities. Here we have the proceeds of financing our loan, that's at 420,000. Then we also have the additional investment of the owner at 88,000. Then we also have the partial payment of financing our loan at 180,000. So our net cash from financing activities is 328,000. So if we sum this up, class, our net cash flow is 527,250. And then we add our cash beginning at 98,000. So our cash end is at 625,250. So once we can already create our statement of cash flow, then we can also complete in answering all the requirements A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, for our next problem, if you can see, we have a net loss here, and then there is a mention of increases. It's different from our earlier example wherein there was a mention of the cash inflow and cash outflow. So for this one, class, if it's not mentioned in the problem, if you are to create a direct or indirect statement of cash flow, and you can see that there are increases or decreases in your current assets or current liabilities, so automatic ingon ani, class, ang ipa-create is the indirect method of SCF. Anyways, in the future, I will always indicate if you are to create a direct or indirect method of the SCF. Okay, the other indicator as well, if you are to create an indirect SCF, is when the problem states a net income or net loss, kay diha man mag-start ang pag-compute sa ato ang net cash flow from operating activities. So in this case, since the problem states a net loss, we will create an indirect statement of cash flow. So first, let us analyze the information if this is an investing, operating, or a financing activity. Okay, let's start with our depreciation expense. So in our indirect method, we consider our depreciation expense as well as our gain or loss on sale. Okay, we depending on the depending on the given in the transaction, we add or deduct the non-cash expenses or non-cash revenues to our net income or net loss. So for our depreciation expense, we consider this in our operating as an addition. Okay, and then next, for our receivables, this is a current asset, and since this is an increase in receivables, this is a deduction to our operating activity. Next, we have our increase in other current assets. Since this is also an increase, we deduct this to our operating activity. And then for our increase in payables, this is a current liability, an addition to our operating activity. Next, we have a Ppe purchase where we paid in cash. So this is a non-current asset, a deduction to our investing activity. Why is it a deduction, class? Because we paid cash, we purchased the equipment. And then this one, next we have long-term notes payable proceeds of 16 million. This is a non-current liability, an addition to our financing activity. So since we have already analyzed the kind of activity, we can then proceed in creating our SFS statement of cash flow. So here we will start with our heading, Your Company Statement of Cash Flows for the year ended December 31, 2020. So for our operating activities, we start with our net loss at negative 18 million. Then, we add our depreciation expense at 1.5 million. So, kini siya nga presentation class, emphasis lang nino nga, even if net income or net loss ang nag-una, same lang gihapon ang mahitabo sa succeeding niya nga mga lines. So we still add the depreciation expense, we still deduct the gain on sale, and then we add the loss on sale. And also the considerations as to increase or decrease in the current assets or current liabilities. So same lang gihapon siya nga formula. Then next, our operating income before working capital changes is a negative 16.5 million. Then we consider our working capital. So unsa ganito ang covered sa atong working capital class? Our current assets and current liabilities. So here we have an increase in our receivables. So we deduct 4,500. Next, we have increase in other current assets, still a deduction of 500,000. The next, we have an increase in our payables, so we add that at 600,000. Then, maura man tanan natong operating activities nga na-identify kaganiha, we sum it up. So our net cash flow from operating activities is a negative 16,404,500. Then we proceed to our cash flows from investing activities. So we have a purchase of PPE, a negative 300,000. So this is the same amount for our net cash flow from investing activity. Next, we have our cash flows from financing activities. So we have here our cash from our long-term borrowing at 16 million. So this is also the same amount for our net cash flow from financing activities. So we just sum it up. Our net cash flow then is negative 704,500. And then we add our cash beginning at 3 million. So our cash end is 2,295,500. Then for our next problem, we have here Lisha Company has cash amounting to 580,000 at the start of 2019. During the year, the firm purchased equipment for cash amounting to 300,000 and borrowed 1,500,000 to finance their upcoming plant expansion. This year's operation resulted into a net income of 650,000, reporting 50,000 as depreciation expense. And then there are differences here as noticed in the SFP. So we are required to prepare the SCF for the year ended December 31, 2019 using the indirect method. Okay, so first we will have to analyze the transactions in this problem. So we start with the first paragraph. Here we can see transactions here. The firm purchased equipment and also borrowed money. So for the purchase of equipment, this is a non-current asset found in our SFP. Since this is a purchase, this is a deduction to our investing activity. Then we have our borrowings. So we have a non-current liability in addition to our financing activity. Then next we have our depreciation. Again, we consider this is a non-cash activity. We will add this to our net income under the operating activity. Then next, let's analyze these differences. So for our increase in accounts receivable, this is a current asset, a deduction to our operating activity. Next, we have our decrease in inventory, an addition to our operating activity. Next, we have increase in other current assets. So this is a deduction to our operating activity. Then for our decrease in accounts payable, this is a current liability, a deduction to our operating activity. Then we have an increase in our accrued expenses. Accrued expenses is a current liability, so this is an addition to our operating activity. So from here, we can then formulate our SCF. So again, we start with our heading, Lisha Company Statement of Cash Flows for the year ended December 31, 2019. So for our cash flows from operating activities, we start with our net income at 650,000. Then we add our depreciation expense at 50,000 to arrive at our operating income before working capital changes at 700,000. Then we add or deduct the changes in our working capital. So we start with the increase in our receivables, a deduction of 30,000, followed by decrease in inventory, an addition of 40,000, increase in other current assets, a deduction of 20,000. Next, we have decrease in accounts payable, still a deduction of 50,000, and then increase in our accrued expenses, an addition to our operating activities at 10,000. So we just sum it up to get our net cash flow from operating activities at 650,000. Then we proceed with our cash flows from investing activities. So here we have purchase of equipment at negative 300,000. Since there are no other activities left for investing, we can already get our net cash flow from investing activities, still at negative 300,000. Then we proceed with our cash flows from our financing activities. So we received cash from our long-term borrowing at 1.5 million. So since this is the only transaction also for our financing, we can then get our net cash flow from financing activities at 1.5 million. So we just sum up our net cash flow to arrive at 1,850,000. And then we add our cash beginning at 580,000 to get our cash ending balance at 2,430,000.